name is Kristen Sutton with Launch New York, and welcome to today's Investor Network Q&A session with Re-Nuble founder and CEO Tania Panina. Before we get started, I'd like to take a minute to have the investors introduce themselves with a quick background so that our presenter has an idea of who she's presenting to. I see that we have Lou Hom joining us. So Lou, would you be able to give Tania a brief background?
Sure. Hi, Tania. So my background is actually in the field of synthetic biology, but also in some ag tech and food technologies. And so I'm really interested in hearing what Re-Nuble has going on.
Great, thanks, Lou. For the format of the session, I'll just introduce Tania real quick and she'll present her pitch. At the conclusion of her presentation, we will have time for questions. The session will be recorded for those who are unable to attend. So I'd now like to introduce our presenter, Tania Panina, founder and CEO of Re-Nuble. Tina, please take it away.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for attending and showing interest in Re-Nuble. We're excited here to show you how we see food waste as being a mechanism to achieve food resiliency around the world, but also to help decarbonize the fertilizer supply chain, which now contributes to 3% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. In New York City, where the vision first started, we spent roughly $186 million exporting food waste to places as far as China, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. And that amount is because we are not able to manage and do not have the infrastructure for diverting food waste from landfills. We've seen that increasingly in other areas such as California, Texas, and Florida, for example. And there's more grant non-dilutive funding, but also environmental mandates pushing to increase zero waste as well as organic diversion. Now, the other side of the food system, we're helping soilless farms be able to grow in the organic category, enabling them to get at least 20 to 60% upside in gross profit margin. They're challenged and not able to do so currently for three main reasons. One is that current organic alternatives are often cost prohibitive. They too run the risk of clogging their systems, which adds to a time and labor cost to manage and done very diligently. Three is that oftentimes the shipping and costs with shipping wet liquids often can be prohibitive. And so there's a lack of compatibility with taking biological inputs and enabling these farms to grow with more precision, more controllability, and oftentimes integrate with their automated dosing controllers or automated systems, which allow them to keep their labor costs down. So I'll skip through that. That was standalone. But what we've designed, what we've developed to help with these challenges is what is called our nutrient delivery system. So it's a proprietary hardware that allows us to take the produce waste that we secure from food manufacturers and food distributors. We work with a manufacturer called Bonduelle here in Rochester. And we take their produce waste and within 24 hours, we pelletize it so that the nutrient delivery system, which would be installed at the soilless farm and integrated in a plug-and-play fashion that allows them to take the pellets, and they buy from us the pellets on a recurring basis. They receive the hardware right now for free, but over time we'll be charging for that. And the hardware takes the pellets and through several reactions within the system, which we've balanced and our moat, our defensibility, is having spent the last 5 years to make sure that we can sense for, we can balance and automate the water chemistry and the biological conversions needed to make sure that there's no risk of food safety pathogens caused by anaerobic dead zones within the system that would cause things such as salmonella or E. coli risk, but also allowing it to be discharged at the back end of the hardware as a concentrated liquid feed. The reason why that's important and beneficial to the farm and what is a major part of our defensibility is we're enabling these farms to in perpetuity recirculate that liquid feed or that liquid concentrate throughout their farm so that they can benefit from not having to dump out their water and they can reduce their water as well as their fertilizer usage costs. Now in the next 16 to 18 months, because of COVID, we needed to think more prudently. we have designed our business model to be in two phases. Right now, we still take the produce waste that we receive for free, and we secure in 3-year supply agreements with the with the food manufacturers, such as Bonduelle. We turn it to a liquid concentrate, the same liquid concentrate that is discharged by the nutrient delivery system. And then that is sold direct to our farms, as well as through our distribution partners that we already have set up and channel partners. Phase 2 is when we fully transition to the pellet and nutrient delivery system, where we still take the produce waste, and instead of turning it into a liquid concentrate, we turn it into pellets. Those pellets work with our nutrient delivery system, which you saw in the previous picture, and that's installed using the existing infrastructure of these soilless greenhouse and indoor farms. And then on their own time and using at the quantity and volume that they wish based on their crop needs, they turn into a liquid concentrate which is a plant food for their crop needs. And the farms that we sell to are basically soilless farms that grow specialty crops such as leafy and salad greens, tomatoes, berries, herbs, and then also you have hops, hemp, and cannabis. The first 3 crop types, or of course 4 crop types, are our immediate priorities. Now, I described food safety pathogens earlier. This is exactly what our product mitigates. When you're dealing with organics, they're competing for air, and oftentimes it can lead to mold and bioaccumulation buildup, which clogs the drip lines or the lines that you see Paul Mock, which is one of the farms that we're relationships with. He owns a farm called Mock's Greenhouse and Farm. That's what they don't want to deal with, which is why they've been using the industry substitute called mineral salts, and that's the synthetic substitute. So just to recap, our long-term vision has to be able to sell recurring fertilizer that's been pelletized, shipped, and stored to these farms so that we're reducing their inventory costs as well as shipping costs. We're 2 times more cost effective than the industry substitute because, again, we're enabling these farms to recirculate the nutrients in a closed system. So that's reducing their overall water and overall fertilizer usage because as the nutrients are recirculated, it's becoming more concentrated and therefore more higher in nutrient concentration. And then lastly, we prevent the clogging that I described. Now, we're often asked by investors, how do we make sure that we have enough food waste to scale with based on our projections? We do this because we set up 3-year supply agreements with the food manufacturers and food distributors that we work with. And in the case that we need to be able to pay for food waste, which we don't foresee that happening in the next 5 years, but in the case, you'll see shortly that our margins are able to absorb that risk. Now, we compete within the organic space, and our category that we're defining is called organic cycling science. Master Blend is the industry substitute, so that you'll see is the mineral salt, and Preempt is the organic alternative. We compete more cheaply, we compete more cheaply based on grow cost per plant. So when a farm looks at a product, they're looking to make sure how much is their fertilizer cost per head of lettuce. And that you can see there, that is enabled by the fact that it's that recirculating loop that I described earlier. Our product is uniquely designed to make food waste compatible, right? So we can take that 3 trillion food waste problem that the US has and turn that into a viable input for soilless farms. Our product is going to be organic certified, which just means it's OMRI certifiable, and the defensibility and the cost competitive. So we're more cheaper and defensible because of our nutrient delivery system that I described. We're competing in a space that continues to grow, both for soil as well as soilless. So globally, you're looking at a $10 billion market that's consisting of both dry and liquid organic fertilizer. Now, in terms of customer segmentation, right now in the US, there's 7,000 small farms, so that's no more than 1 acre. There's roughly 7,000 to 8,000 medium-sized farms, so you're looking at a max of 21 acres or less. And then for the enterprise level farm, I apologize, there's 121 farms that are considered enterprise level within the US. Highly automated using Dutch-based technologies to allow for that precision. Based on selling direct to farms as well as through our channel partners, it's a $3.2 billion here selling in the US. Now, by having a facility in markets such as New York, California, Texas, Illinois, and Florida, not including the ability to sell product to cannabis and hemp growers, you're looking at our share of market at $125 million. Now, what I didn't mention on this slide is we have identified ways to license aspects of the nutrient delivery system, and those numbers are not accounted for in this market sizing. So the product unit economics for the liquid concentrate right now is $25 average selling price, achieving a gross margin of 55%. And our COGS in terms of production cost is $11 per unit or per gallon. When we fully transition to selling the pellets with the nutrient delivery system, the great thing is you'll see the gross margin be able to increase to 74%. And that's what's really gotten a lot of us excited and a lot of our investors. So our goal the next 12 months is to reach profitability by selling to the 8 farms that we've already either gotten verbal commitments, signed contracts for, and have the eagerness to start very soon. So that's really what we want to focus on, is over delivering on customer service, on production efficiencies, and making sure that we have a repeatable, scalable process to show that the bent up demand, we can deliver on those metrics very swiftly after 12 months. The distribution that we have, so we use marketing referral partnerships because they're more cost effective than your typical traditional distributor. But our typical traditional distributor, Amhydro, as you see at the bottom, commands 30%, whereas our marketing referral partnerships, depending on the size of their audience and their network, can get anywhere between 5 to 15% of commission. And we are in talks with an online marketplace called True Leaf Market, which sells seeds direct to the same types of farms that we target. Our financial projections, the main takeaway here is that our farm trial agreement, so our sales process is the following. Basically, we give free product. So in the case right now, the free liquid concentrate in 2 months to allow a farm to basically get 2 separate months of trial data before they automatically convert into a multi-year supply agreement. And so that's built in, knowing that they recognize we're putting in the investment on the training and the installation and just the support, and then that commits them to several year product purchase agreement. When a farm tries a product, the great thing about soilless farms, which is why we focused on that niche, is because unlike soil, their adoption rates is much more quick. With soil farms, it's usually a 30, 60, 90%, meaning they'll allocate 30% of their cropland to trial a new product, and then the subsequent year, 60%, and so on. Whereas with a soilless farm, because you're able to turn that many harvests per year, you're getting the results pretty quickly. And within those 2 months, they'll dedicate a specific R&D space within the greenhouse, indoor or vertical farm. And then if all the outcomes, and there's 2 outcomes that we measure by, if all the outcomes show successful or prove successful, then they fully deploy the rest of the farm 100% to that new product. Now, the 2 outcomes that allow us to basically convert a farm is to make sure that we haven't decreased their current yields. And the second thing is that we've met their water chemistry needs, which are the plant food needs of the crop being grown. Our use of funds, so we're raising $1.5 million. We have $500,000 of that in the bank, soft circling 250, and that's actually increased to 500 recently. And then there's the remaining 3 VCs that we're speaking with right now in due diligence that could close the gap for us. We've just kind of early started on the DD process. But the use of funds for that $1.5 million, which is raised as a convertible note, is to focus squarely on the $2 million sales goal that I described earlier. Production and sales, and really nothing more than that on a very lean team. Our management team, I started the company with a vision in 2012 while working full time and bootstrapping it with a couple of others to help underserved communities get access to more affordable organic produce. And if we could enable more soilless farms to grow organically, thereby increasing the supply, then inherently we could bring down the price point and allow for more people to be able to afford it. Right now, especially with the vertical farms, and that's kind of an isolated community, it's still largely outside of an accessible price point. But I developed the IP with my friend Matt Farrell, who I've known since high school. So he's largely the plant scientist, the main introducer of Mox Greenhouse and Farm, which operates 28 greenhouses, which is roughly about 4 to 6 acres in total. Dr. Torello is our chief of R&D. And unlike Matt, where he can focus on what is the crop needs for a soilless farm, and also can advise on the systems and the build out of greenhouses, because he's done that, for example, with Mox Greenhouse, Dr. Torello can help us take and design processes around food waste as a raw material and make it conform to the grow needs of soil farms as well as soilless. Rahul Bansali, who's joined us about over a year ago, is our COO. He was a former EIR with NYSERDA in downstate New York, but his background is serial entrepreneur, former investment banker, and brings a ton of facility in terms of scaling as well as financial planning to do that. And then Rihanna Razali is our head of business development. So she brings a ton of experience from private equity, working in Malaysia. But that is really key because we've seen a ton of interest in India and Singapore specifically, as well as the MENA region, to replicate soilless farms, but to also enable them to take the large amounts of food waste that they have and domestically allow them to produce fertilizer for their domestic farms. Because, for example, with the MENA region, they're trying to increase their domestic produce production by 90% right now. So I can talk through this later if you guys have any questions. This is the risk mitigation plan. We thought very prudently around how to really survive on a runway with COVID and how to mitigate risk around sales should they not hit at the clip that we have planned. And want to say thank you so much for the interest and happy to answer any questions.
Great presentation, Tania. Now we have some time for some questions. So investors, please jump in right away with any questions you may have.
I've got a few questions here. I'd be interested in learning a little bit more about the feedstock that you use or your inputs. So as I understand it, when you use the word organic, you're not just talking about organic versus mineral, but also organic in the not synthetic, certified organic sense of the word. Is that right?
You're right. So we do focus on vegetative waste for a couple of reasons. We've gone through the experience of incorporating your general municipal or post-consumer waste, so the overall food waste. And if not careful, there are additional biological issues it introduces. So it was very challenging. And so that's why we isolated and kept to a mandate of just keeping it vegetative waste because it gave us more control. Now, organic, even though we can take conventionally grown produce waste or organic produce waste and still get it organic certified as a fertilizer, that's just because with the OMRI code, it's able to do so. Compost, for example, takes all municipal organic waste and is able to get it organic certified. But we specifically focus on the vegetative waste that is your typical production residual. So think of potato peelings and leafy cutting remains.
Got it. And so these are food processors that are feeding into your system?
Good point. So it's food processors as well as food distributors. What we've recognized both here in upstate New York as well as in New York City, food distributors also have a challenge because they're, for example, in the Hunts Point market, where it's one of the country's largest food distribution points, they can divert food waste to, food recovery companies such as City Harvest. That's a nonprofit actually, but City Harvest can't take that entire volume because some of that produce isn't really edible or safe to be consumed because it may have fell on the floor. So we're able to take that from them.
Great. And can you tell me a little bit about the process for producing the fertilizer? And I'm partly asking out of concern about plant pathogens.
Plant pathogens, good point. So we have 2 points of pathogen kill steps. One is when we first dry it, so it reaches temperatures as high as 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And I forget, it needs to reach a minimum of, I believe, 175 for a duration of 30 minutes, if I remember correctly, to do an official pathogen kill step. So we actually exceed that. And then there's a second pathogen kill step right when it's pelletized. There's a second point where it's introduced to heat again.
Got it. Okay. And your pellets don't contain any insoluble materials, I'm assuming, and so I'm wondering what happens to the insoluble waste stream during your production.
Good point. So the great thing is when we design the process, we're able to introduce any insoluble materials back into our process to extract as much as we can. And then anything that we can't, we do send to a composting facility. But right now, we anticipate that from what we've experienced in the past, we anticipate that rate to be less than 5%.
Got it. Okay. And then in your use of funds slide, you mentioned allocating about, I guess it works out to about $23,000 for R&D. And I'm wondering what sort of development work remains to be done.
So we actually already raised that from a second NYSERDA Ignition grant. So the R&D that's consisting of that is basically there's a second pellet that we need to have formulated to meet the needs of your fruiting crops. So berries and tomatoes need a different NPK or nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium to serve their plant food needs. They would use our current pelletized fertilizer, which has a 3-1-2 NPK, but then they need a Part B or a second fertilizer formulation to meet their entire growth needs. So that's one. Two is just making sure that we've done enough customer segmentation with the installation and training needs of the nutrient delivery system that we transition to 12 months from now.
Got it. Okay. And how many different fertilizer products or components do you need to have available for growers? So you mentioned fruiting crops are different from, say, lettuce or other greens.
Yeah, so with leafy lettuce, for example, we just need one. Our pellet, because it has macronutrients and micronutrients, for example, magnesium, boron, iron, meets the full spectrum of nutrients that a head of lettuce would need, or any herbs, for example. Now, for a fruiting crop such as tomatoes or even strawberries, they're going to need a higher amount of phosphorus and lower amount of nitrogen when they're going through the flowering stage. When they're first experiencing their early days of growth, they would have our current pellet. And then as they're going through, I think it's week 6, 7, and 8, they transition to their flowering stage. And that's when we would introduce the second pellet formulation.
Got it. Okay. And then I guess my last question is, I was a little bit surprised to see the convertible note having a term of 12 months. And then I was expecting something longer, I guess. And I'm wondering what you expect the situation to be in 12 months from now.
You know, I apologize. I have to look at that. I apologize, Lou. I thought it was 18 months. We have been doing 18 months, and that's a oversight on my end. So I'll definitely look back at that.
Great. I just want to make sure I didn't misread it myself.
No, that's fair.
But great. Well, that covers my questions. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
I see that we did have another investor dial in as Tania started. I'm not sure who that is, but if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask. It looks like you're muted if you are trying to speak. Okay, I think that's it for today. So thank you for taking the time to learn more about Re-Nuble. I will connect Lou and Tania via email for any follow-up questions you may have. If you have any, we ask that you please keep Matt and I on the CC so that if you need any more information at any time, please don't hesitate to reach out to Matt or I. So thank you both and have a great rest of your day.
Thanking.
Great, thank you. You too.
Great. Thanks.